Hi, this is Craig Stocks here at Utah Desert Remote Observatories. You can find us online at utahdesertremote.com. And today I want to talk about a couple very specific topics that I've had a number of questions about. And that's using a solid fill layer. And also we're going to talk about using an inspection layer. And these two techniques you can use in Photoshop to really improve your astrophotography. So let's jump into Photoshop, and I have already processed the start of this image. This is the Crab Nebula, and if we look at the layers palette over here, you can see what I've got so far. As always, I have layer groups, and I have the RGB layer group at the bottom, and that's starless RGB. And if I alt-click on the eyeball, that's what that layer looks like by itself. And that's just serving as a little bit of a background underneath the sulfur and the oxygen and the hydrogen. So these are color mapped as SHO using what's normally called the Hubble palette. And then we have the stars in a layer group on the top. And I don't know how well you can see it. Let me turn the stars off. The background is dark. It's got some color. This data is just a couple hours of data on a night with quite a bit of moonlight. So, overall the background is just kind of mottled and ugly, and there's nothing interesting going on there. So I really want to just make that background disappear, but I don't want to make it pure black. Generally, you want your background to be a little bit above a pure black, rather than just a solid pure black by itself. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to come above the hydrogen group, and I'm going to add, first I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer, and then I'm going to put this levels adjustment layer in its own group with Control G. That would be a Command G on a Mac. And then I'll just name this layer group Global. So this is where all of my global adjustments are going to be. So the first thing we might want to do is just darken the blacks, and that would darken that background. And I can darken it down, and that looks quite a bit better. But how do I know if it's really all the way dark? I typically use a black background, so I know I don't want it to be completely black like that. We want it to be a little lighter than that. And one of the challenges is when you start getting down into those real dark tones, monitors a lot of times don't respond very well, and they don't really show you everything that's hiding in the darks. Even if I darken it quite a bit, there may still be stuff lurking in there. So the first thing we're going to do is introduce the idea of an inspection layer. And an inspection layer is an adjustment layer that we're going to use to temporarily change the look of the image so that we can see it better. In this case, we're going to brighten the image dramatically so that we can really see what's going on in these dark tones. And again, this is just temporary for inspection. It's like using a magnifying glass to look at something. You're not going to walk around with a magnifying glass, but you might use it to inspect something. And so we're going to go actually above the global adjustments and below the stars. And I'm going to add another levels adjustment layer. And I'm just going to grab the midpoint slider and move it to the left to dramatically lighten the background. And you can see when I do that, that this background really was not completely dark. There's still a lot of stuff, a lot of noise, a lot of just junk hiding in here that we don't want. And if I hadn't darkened this quite so much, I really went probably overboard. You can see there's dust spots and color noise and just all kinds of ugliness going on back there. So this inspection layer helps us see things that we probably wouldn't have seen otherwise. So how do we fix this? And this is where the solid fill layer comes in. And what a solid fill layer does is it creates a very dark layer in light and blending mode. So the only thing it's going to affect is anything darker than it, and it's going to lighten anything darker than that very dark gray to that dark gray. So to do that, I'm going to come down to the little kind of a yin-yang looking symbol at the bottom and choose solid color. So this is a solid color fill layer. And I want RGB values of 19, 19, 19. You may find you want a different value, but you probably want something somewhere between 15 and 25. 25 is fairly bright, 15 is starting to get pretty dark. Most monitors and printers, anything less than 10 to 15 is going to probably display or print as pure black, unless it's being looked at by somebody who has a very bright monitor, and then they're going to see all of those details that you don't see on your monitor. So the easiest way to get 19, 19, 19 for RGB is to use this hexadecimal field, which is selected by default when you create a solid color fill layer. And the hexadecimal equivalent of 19 is 13. So if I just type 131313, that gives me a solid color 19, 19, 19. Now, the reason it looks so bright is it's below this inspection layer. And so you can see that with the inspection layer on, and I'm going to rename this inspection so it's clear. When the inspection layer is turned on, this very dark gray looks very light. If I turn the inspection layer off, now it looks 19, 19, 19, and that's what we want the whole background to look like. So the other trick with a solid color fill layer, we've got it set to 19, 19, 19, but we want it to only brighten anything that's darker than that. So the way we do that is to put this solid fill layer in lighten blending mode. So it's going to lighten anything darker than itself, and it'll have no effect on anything brighter than itself. So now we're in lighten blending mode, and let's turn on our inspection layer. Just looking at it on my screen, it looks pretty good. Let's turn on the inspection layer and see if it really is pretty good. Yeah, it really is pretty good. There's a couple areas. There's a little bit of blue up here in this corner. There's some blue across the top, light area here. There's some junk going on around the nebula, but that is because we have darkened this background quite a bit. So let's take this black slider and move it back. So there's without using this global adjustment layer, and all I did was darken the background until it's dark enough that, now see, it's almost disappeared. We can still see some junk over here on the left. There's some along the bottom, quite a bit of blue across the top, but we only can see that because of our inspection layer. Without the inspection layer, you might not notice some of the discoloration and some of the noise. So with the inspection layer turned on, I will adjust this global black down to, I guess, as far as I dare go. I want to keep some of the detail around the nebula. So I'm going to locally adjust these other areas. And I'm going to do that by adding a blank layer. And we can selectively burn and dodge. Now, because this is an area that's just going to be solid dark gray, it doesn't matter what color I paint down here. I could paint just pure black at 100% opacity, and that will immediately get rid of any of those areas. In fact, let's just make this brush big. Let's just paint this whole background black. Now, the reason it doesn't look black is because of our inspection layer. If I turn off the inspection layer, it's not black, it's very dark gray. If I turn off the solid color, then it's black, and that's darker than we want. We really want the dark gray. And it looks like I can see on the thumbnail preview that there's a couple spots down here I missed. Now, if you've got something that you want to preserve, for instance, let's say there had been some background galaxies down here, then you don't want to just paint solid black and wipe out those galaxies and untold civilizations. What you would want to do is use this in a soft light blending mode and just gently darken the darks without really affecting those distant galaxies. And so we can turn the stars back on, and that's what the image looks like. If I turn the inspection layer on, we can see that in fact we've got a nice, very clean background, and there's nothing hiding in the shadows. So that's two really useful techniques. One is this solid color fill. Without it, there was a lot of junk going on in the background that was hard to see. The inspection layer allows us to see all that junk that was in the background. The solid fill layer got rid of most of it, and then this layer where I just painted black got rid of all the rest of those artifacts. We can now turn our inspection layer off and save this as a finished image. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, drop those in the comments down below and I'll try to answer them. And as always, I hope you have a great day today and an even better night tonight under a clear, dark sky. Thanks.